Hi, and welcome to this session where we are introducing a new feature called Master Data Management. I'm Brian, and with me in the studio I have Georgia, and we'll take you through this new feature. For Master Data Management, there's a setup you need to go through, there's a synchronization that needs to happen, and then there are also features that you can use while or after you have done your synchronization. All of that is what Georgia will show you in a few seconds. The general concept with Master Data Management is that you have a group of companies, stores, factories, maybe a headquarters company, it could be any of these, where one company holds the main records, maybe a list of vendors, maybe the list of items, maybe payment terms or whatever, and they maintain them. And the other companies will use the same records. So of course they want to keep them in sync with a mechanism for that. It also may be that different sets of companies have different requirements for what they need to keep in sync with that main company. It could be that stores just need the vendors, external vendors, and list of products. It could be that a factory needs the list of products, need of vendors, need of suppliers, subcomponents, what have you. So there are different needs for the individual companies to what they need to keep in sync. Actually, it could also be, but we will not show that you pick a different company, like maybe that store 2 will just need data from store 1 instead of the headquarters. But you have different needs, and that can be done because the setup for what you need to, or for what you will keep in sync, is done at the individual company level. So the setup for store 1 can be different from the setup for store 2. And that is because the model that we are introducing for Master Data Management, for various reasons, is a pull model. You pull the data from your source rather than it's the source that dictates that this is the items that we'll keep in sync and then push the data. So that is the model. But Georgia will tell you more about how it works, where you set it up, how you get it going, and what you do when you encounter different scenarios using that feature. So I'll hand it over to Georgia.
Yes. So let me demonstrate how the feature works. Here I am in Business Central Online in the evaluation company. And if I change the tab, this is the trial company of the Business Central Online environment, which is in the beginning it has no master data. It has some setup data, such as a few number series or setup records. So let us try and synchronize these two companies so that the evaluation company is the source and the trial company is the subsidiary who pulls the data from the source and wants to have the data synchronized whenever a change happens in the source company. So let's set it up. So if you go into global search and you just type the shortcut of this feature, MDM, you will see the setup page and the synchronization tables page. But to start using the feature, you need to run the setup. And the setup is really simple. You choose your source company. We are in the same environment, so it is just a company that you choose. And for this scenario, I will choose the evaluation company, Kronos USA, and enable the feature. Once you enable the feature, the dialog will tell you what you can do. There are essentially two things. You can look at which tables are being synchronized by default, and you can start using the feature by doing the initial synchronization. So let's look at the tables a little bit. These are the tables that we propose as default. You can see customer, contact, vendor, GL account, dimensions, and so on. The basic tables that we think are needed to start a company. You can disable any of these default tables. You can remove them from this list as well. You can set filters here. This is an important feature. For example, for contacts, we have a default filter that it should be a contact of type person and that it has non-empty company number. For customer, we have a filter that it should not be blocked, and so on. For some tables, by default, we don't have any filter. But you can define your filter so that you get a subset of records for any of these tables. If we look at fields, you can see that we have, for some of the tables, we enabled all the meaningful fields by default. For some of them, we enabled much less, such as purchases and payables setup. We only enable the minimal amount of fields that is required for the feature to work from the start. You can enable more fields if you want. And then you can also choose, on each field, you can choose, let me just show you. You can choose either to run validate logic or not. By default, we don't run validate on most of the fields. You can choose to run it, and so on. So it is configurable in the sense that you can decide which fields you synchronize, and you can define a filter on a table. Let's start now using the feature. This it's the action called start initial synchronization. And this will run a controlled synchronization on the set of default tables that we have lined up. And it will do it in a specific order because it is important that some tables that others depend on come in first. So let's start the full synchronization. I should just mention also that we have two modes of synchronizing. If the system detects that the source has records in a table, but your company has no records, it will just suggest full synchronization. It will just create records in the local company and couple them with the source. If it detects that you have data in your local company and source also has data, it will propose match-based coupling. And if we click here on the match-based coupling, we have also filled out the default criteria for matching. We do matching on fields that you choose, and we do simple equality matching. So by default, we match on primary key here, and we say if you don't find the match, create a new record and synchronize the record after you couple the existing records. So let's run the full sync, the initial synchronization. As you can see, you can now stay in the page and press F5 and you will see how the initial synchronization is progressing. You may see some intermediate errors, but if you keep pressing F5, you will notice that these jobs will eventually recover. And you should just focus on following it while it's running it. You can, for example, for these that are done, let's look at dimensions. You can click on success. It will open the synchronization log, and you can see that it has inserted 7 dimensions, and if you drill down on this number, you can see which dimensions it has inserted. In case of failures, they would end up in this column. We will show that later in the demo. So you can close and come back to the page and press F5, and you can see it is progressing. We can see that the number series has an error. You can review this error. And let's see, you can click on the failed and see the reason why they have failed. So in this case, because number series has a match-based coupling and it does the synchronization after it couples, it sometimes gives this error, but if you just press F5, it recovers. And then the other tables continue synchronizing, those that were dependent on number series. Let's look at this one. Why did it fail during the initial synchronization? It tells us that the record in the GL account already exists, which is normally not an issue. So if a line or a table gets stuck in error state and others do not run because they are waiting for it to complete, you can just select that line and hit restart. Yeah, so if you just restart the line that ended up in error, it will eventually recover, because the error that we saw was not actionable, or it was intermediate. So now the initial synchronization is done, and you can see that now in the trial company you have customer records that are brought over from the source company. And they are not just copied over, they are also coupled, in the sense that if a change happens in the source company, the change will be synchronized and propagated to the subsidiary. So let's demonstrate that. So now I'm in the evaluation company, which is the source. Let me change the name of a customer. So that is now saved in the source company. If we go over to the subsidiary company and hit F5 in the customer list, you can see that this customer got a new name. It was synchronized over from the source. To view a bit more what happened, you can type in the feature shortcut MDM, or you can just type synchronization tables. Here you can see that synchronization log that we were viewing while initial synchronization was running. You can look at it from here. You can select the customer table here and choose the action synchronization log. And you will see that the one customer was modified. That is the one that changed in the source company, and it got modified, got a new name. Now I will demonstrate how do we prevent unintentional overrides. Let's say that the subsidiary makes a change to this record, but let's change the credit limit, for example, to a value 200, and then the source company makes a change on that same field with a different value. And now, because the source company changed this record, it will try to synchronize and propagate to subsidiaries. But if we look at the synchronization log, synchronization tables, and the log of customers, we will see that the synchronization failed. And it failed because the synchronization engine noticed that the subsidiary has changed this record after the last synchronization, and the source company also changed that record and tried to bring in a new value for that field. So we block that by default, and we tell you what to do. So before retrying this synchronization, you should open synchronization tables and select this table and choose the action fields to see the fields. And then for this field, you should, if you want to let source company version of the field always override the local changes, you can check that checkbox. There's a checkbox, override local changes. You can do it on the table level as well. So let's do that. So we'll go in the customer table and the fields. So here in the fields list, let's find the credit limit field. We can filter on the caption. Put this text, and here it is. And for the credit limit field, I can say overwrite local changes. Let's see, yeah, overwrite local changes. And that's saving. And now I can restart the synchronization of customer table. I can do that by choosing an action called synchronize modified records. This will literally tell to the sync engine, for customer table, bring in any new changes that you have. It is retrying. It is telling you that a sync job was scheduled ad hoc. So let's look at our customer, and yes, it got the value of credit limit from the source company. So that's the way. So we have just demonstrated how can you handle errors and retry if an error happens. We demonstrated it on this specific error that is related to overwriting local changes. At any time you can access the error list from the synchronization tables. You can access synchronization log, we showed that, and then you have more options. You can view the job queue entries. You can enable or disable a table. If you disable it, it will just stop synchronizing. You can run full synchronization on it ad hoc, or just bring in the fields that are modified since the last synchronization. So let's look at this one, job queue entry. For example, for each of these tables, there is a job queue entry that is running periodically. It is set up to run unconditionally every half an hour and bring in new changes. But as you have seen, as soon as you make a change in the source company, it will instruct the job queue entries in the subsidiaries to restart right away. So you don't need to set these job queue entries up to run very often unconditionally. They will be restarted when a change happens in the source company. So there is no need to run it every 5 minutes, for example. It will run at every change. Let's just show how can you add new tables to the mix. To add a new table, you would go to synchronization tables simply and just click new. Let's say that we want to synchronize the employee table. It opens the list of tables. And let's find the employee table. And let's add that. It added the employee table, and by default all the fields are disabled, so you should choose which fields to synchronize. For this demo, let's just select them all and then say enable. It will just enable the selected fields, and it added the mapping. It's right here, and if you refresh this list of tables, it actually already ran the full synchronization on it, and it already inserted 7 employees from the source company, and they even have pictures, as you can see. So as you can see, the synchronization of blob fields, of media fields happens seamlessly. You don't have to code anything for that to happen. So there was a demonstration of how you can add a new table. I also want to demonstrate that you can, at any time, you can run this match-based coupling, which was running for a certain number of tables during the initial synchronization. You can run that even from this list. You can invoke the action called match-based coupling on any table, and it will open this this dialog where you select the coupling criteria, and you can choose which fields you want to couple the existing records on, and then run this. You can choose whether to create new ones if you don't find a match, and whether or not to synchronize them after. So this is a small feature that you can run at any moment. let's say you bring in, let's say you disable a synchronization for a certain table, and then you create some records in the subsidiary and create them in the source. Then you can re-enable the mapping and run the matching criteria to match existing records. Yeah, and let me show you also something about, there's a scenario where if you publish an extension and add more fields to the table, you can then update this fields list. We have this action update fields. It will re-add all the existing fields and also the new fields that are brought in with your new extension. So your new extension fields will appear here, and then you can enable or disable them as well. So that scenario is covered as well. You can also export the setup actions. You actually do it from the master data management setup. You can export the setup to an XML file. You can then, when you create a new empty or in another subsidiary company, you can import this setup, and it would keep all the information about your filters on the tables, the fields that you chose, or any tables that you added to the setup. So this is one way of sharing the setup across different companies. Of course, you can also copy a company. You can copy the subsidiary company, and the setup of master data management will be copied as well, but you will have to rerun the initial synchronization. We cannot copy the information of which record is coupled to which record in the source, because when you copy the company, you will get new unique IDs on all the records. So you have to rerun the initial synchronization. So that's not a big issue. It is tested and it works. So let's say if you have already brought in master data in a company and then you copy it, of course all that master data will be copied to the new company. And when you run initial synchronization, all the synchronization modes, you will see that the system is proposing match-based coupling. So the initial synchronization would be the match-based coupling, and it would just couple the existing records. So, yeah, that is the feature.
Yeah. What about things like running a master data management on transaction tables? Because you're not excluding any table.
Exactly, that is transaction tables. We chose not to exclude them. So, for example, if you add a new table, you will see a table like general ledger entries here. You can attempt to add it, but the synchronization will fail, because to write into GL entry, you need to have the code unit that does it needs to elevate permissions to write or to insert or to modify. And none of the code units of the synchronization engine do that. So you can add this table, but you will not be able to synchronize it because it will fail to write in this table. We chose not to filter them out. We chose to just show them, but you cannot run synchronization on them. You can attempt, you will see integration synchronization errors full of errors.
Another scenario would be, what if I set up one company to synchronize from another company, but also set that company up to synchronize, like to try to do a two-way sync?
Yes, that is, we tested it and it works, although it is not recommended. So you can set companies A and B to be the source of each other, so they would exchange data and keep it in sync. You might want to put the override local changes on both sides on those tables, and then they will just share the data. But this is not something we recommend, but it works.
Yeah. I think you mentioned extending tables, and then you could use the update function. What about if I have custom tables? Will they show up?
They will also show up. If you add new tables with an extension, you will see them in the tables list, and you can add them and synchronize them. Yes.
Cool. Great. A completely new feature with a new set of scenarios in its scope, so we hope you will use it. For the future, because it's a new feature, there's always things to improve or things to change. We are looking into how we could potentially add something so that the management of the setups in the subsidiary could be done centralized. I don't think we will change to a push model, but maybe the setting up could be centralized in one way or the other. We are looking into it. We are also looking into how we could expand master data management to be cross-environment. For now, the feature is within the same environment from one company to the other, but obviously there's a lot of scenarios where you have different environments. There's also different challenges with that, but that is one of the areas that we are looking into. So keep an eye for improvements to master data management. That was all for now. As always, you can engage with us on Yammer and on Twitter. You can also, when you've started using the feature, submit new ideas for changes or improvements on BC Ideas, and we'll look into them for future releases. Thanks for watching this video.